Welcome to this deep dive. Today we're exploring a really fascinating figure, St. George. We'll be looking at him mainly through an Orthodox Christian lens.
Mm-hmm. And it's quite a story, isn't it? You've got historical accounts sort of blended with these incredible, miraculous narratives.
Absolutely. And that blend is part of why he's still so captivating.
Yeah.
Centuries later, people find him incredibly inspiring.
It really is remarkable. He sits right at that crossroads of, well, history and legend. Understanding him isn't just about the past, it helps us grasp why he's still seen as such a vital presence today.
Exactly. So our goal, our mission for this deep dive is to really unpack that enduring significance. We'll look at his early life, his amazing courage during the persecutions.
Yeah, that famous dragon story, of course.
Right. And also the miracles that are said to continue even after his death. We want to get a sense of why he's held up as this model of faith and bravery.
Okay, so where do we start? His beginnings.
Let's do that. So he was born in Cappadocia.
That's the tradition. Born into a Christian family, noble status, his father actually died a martyr for the faith.
Wow, early on. That must have shaped him profoundly.
Undoubtedly. Afterwards, his mother took him to Palestine. And it seems it was there his love for Christ really blossomed. He was raised in piety.
And in a military career. Seems like quite a shift.
Well, he was apparently known for his valor, his skill. It brought him to the attention of Emperor Diocletian himself.
And he ended up in the Imperial Guard. That's pretty high up.
It was a prestigious position, yes. He clearly had exceptional abilities.
Okay, so he's established, respected, but then comes the turning point, Diocletian's persecution.
Yes, and this was a particularly brutal one. Widespread, severe, and George's reaction, well, it wasn't what you might expect from someone in his position. He didn't just lay low.
No, he didn't. He actually went before the Senate, made this incredibly bold declaration. I have the quote here. I am a servant of Christ, my God, and trusting in him, I have come among you voluntarily to bear witness concerning the truth.
Just think about that for a moment. The courage it took.
Standing before the powers that be, knowing the likely consequences, he was putting everything on the line. His career, his status, his life.
It really throws into sharp relief the conflict between earthly power and, well, spiritual conviction. He had so much worldly stuff to lose, but clearly his faith came first.
Yeah, Diocletian's response was predictable, I suppose, extreme. The stories of the tortures are quite graphic.
They are harrowing, yes. Both historical sources and later traditions detail these brutal attempts to make him renounce his faith. But the key theme, especially in the tradition, is divine intervention, miraculous endurance.
Right, like the Wheel of Blades, supposedly torn apart.
And then healed by an angel. That's the account. Then there's the lime pit.
3 days in burning lime, and he survived unharmed.
Mm-hmm. According to the stories. And there's more poisoned cups that didn't affect him at all.
Which must have just baffled his torturers.
You'd think so. And perhaps the most striking one is the raising of a dead man through his prayers.
That event is said to have converted many witnesses right there on the spot.
Exactly. Whether you take it literally or, symbolically, it speaks powerfully about faith overcoming death itself. Imagine the hope that offered to persecuted Christians.
It's just incredible resilience. And after all that, Diocletian tries one last thing. He offers George co-rule of the empire.
Talk about a temptation. From torture chamber to potential emperor.
But George's reply just seals it, doesn't it? Nothing in this inconstant life can weaken my resolve to serve God.
Utterly unwavering. It really shows the depth of his commitment. No compromise.
So that's the core narrative of his martyrdom. Faith, defiance, incredible endurance. But then there's the image everyone knows. St. George and the dragon.
Ah, yes, the dragon. Probably the most famous part of his legend. The traditional location is Beirut.
Okay. And the story goes this dragon was terrorizing the city.
Yes, demanding human sacrifices.
No.
Horrific. And eventually, the lot fell to the king's own daughter.
The princess herself. A classic damsel in distress scenario, almost.
And just as she's facing this terrible fate, enter St. George. On his horse, of course.
The knight in shining armor.
Pretty much. The accounts say he confronted the beast, made the sign of the cross, invoked Christ's name, and then slew the dragon with his lance.
It's such an iconic image. Courageous knight, monstrous evil vanquished.
Yeah.
But there's more to it than just a cool battle, right?
Yeah.
Symbolically.
Oh, definitely. The dragon is almost always interpreted as, well, evil, chaos, paganism, perhaps. The forces fighting against God.
So George's victory is the triumph of good. Faith over fear.
Precisely. And it represents the protection God offers the faithful through his saints. And importantly, the story usually ends with the entire city converting.
Because they witnessed this miracle.
Yes, they saw the power of Christ demonstrated and they were baptized. So the slaying isn't just personal heroism, it's an act with huge consequences for the community's faith.
Right. Now, his story doesn't end with his martyrdom or even the dragon, does it? There's this whole aspect of ongoing miracles.
Absolutely crucial. The belief in his continued intercession is central to why he's venerated. These aren't just old tales, it's a living faith tradition. People believe he still helps.
Can we look at some examples? I know there are quite a few recorded across different times and places.
Sure, there's a well-known one from Mount Athos. Some bandits were planning to rob, maybe harm, two old monks,
Okay.
but they were stopped by this mysterious young novice who just appeared and then vanished. Later, the bandits saw an icon of St. George and realized it was him.
Wow. And what happened to the bandits?
Well, the leader, a man named Stamatis, was so struck by it all, he actually repented and became a monk himself.
That's incredible. It shows a kind of transformative power.
Exactly. Then there's a story from near the Euphrates River about sacred groves dedicated to St. George.
Groves of trees.
Yes. A local Turk was apparently warned not to cut down the living trees. He could take dead wood, but not harm the living ones.
A specific warning. If you must, gather only the dead wood, but never harm the living. Something like that.
That's the essence of it, yes. And later, a woman ignored the warning, cut a living tree, and was supposedly paralyzed until she repented.
So that links him to protecting nature, God's creation.
It certainly suggests that, yeah, a broader protective role.
Interesting. And didn't another saint have an encounter with him as a child?
You're probably thinking of St. George Carslatus. As a boy in the Caucasus, he was apparently lost or in danger and was rescued by a mysterious rider.
Who he later realized was St. George.
Yes, and significantly, when he became a monk, he took the name George, a very personal connection.
It points to these very direct personal interventions. What about the story from Syria? In a cave church.
That's a remarkable one. The caretaker supposedly witnessed a liturgy happening in the church, attended by the Theotokos, the Mother of God and angels.
An invisible liturgy.
Apparently. And St. George arrived late. When asked why, he explained he'd been busy saving a sinking ship.
Saving his ship. How do they know?
The tangible proof, according to the story, was that his cloak was still wet from the sea.
Wow. That adds such a physical detail to it. It feels almost immediate.
And these stories aren't all ancient. There are accounts from much more recent times, too.
Like during World War II.
Yes, there's the story of Charalambos Gallinopoulos, a Greek prisoner sentenced to death by the occupiers.
Facing execution.
He cried out to St. George for help, and suddenly they heard a horse galloping and a powerful voice shouted, "Release these innocent men!"
What happened?
The execution squad apparently panicked and fled. Gallinopoulos survived and later became a monk on Mount Athos.
Another life changed. Another connection to Athos. The sheer number of these accounts is striking. What do you think that says about us, about the need for these stories?
Well, I think it speaks to a profound human need for hope, for intervention, especially when things seem desperate. Whether you see them as literal events or powerful symbols, they offer comfort, a sense that we're not alone, that there's help available beyond our own strength.
And wasn't there one even during the Soviet era in Samarkand?
Yes. A church had been closed by the authorities. Then, this stern-looking military officer shows up at the mayor's office, demands the church be reopened immediately, terrifies the officials.
A military officer.
That's how he appeared. But later, the priest saw an icon of St. George and identified him as the mysterious officer.
So appearing in different guises, intervening across time, across cultures.
Yeah.
It's quite a heresy.
It really is. He seems to manifest as this active force, stepping in when needed.
So if we try to boil it down, why does St. George resonate so deeply after all these centuries? What are the key takeaways?
I think, first off, it's his sheer bravery, defying an emperor for his faith. That's powerful.
A model of courage, definitely.
Then there's the wonder worker aspect, the miracles, both during his life and after. People connect with that sense of divine power breaking into the ordinary world.
And he's seen as a protector, isn't he? In all sorts of danger.
Very much so. Rescuing people from physical threats, injustice, even spiritual despair, perhaps. A go-to figure in times of peril.
And maybe fundamentally, he acts as a kind of bridge between heaven and earth.
That's a good way to put it. His story and the belief in his ongoing help demonstrates that conviction that saints aren't just historical figures, but active intercessors. They connect us to the divine.
It's truly a compelling narrative. You can see why it's inspired so many for so long.
Mm-hmm.
And for those listening who might feel drawn to him, there's a traditional prayer often used. O holy great martyr George, thou who art swift to aid the suffering, stand with us in the battles of this life, visible and unseen. By thy prayers may we too endure all trials unshaken and attain the victory of Christ's eternal kingdom. Amen.
A beautiful prayer. And his main feast day is April 23rd.
Which is May 6th on the old calendar, for those who follow that.
Right. And his patronages are quite broad. Soldiers, farmers, travelers, prisoners, really anyone facing oppression or danger.
So as we wrap up this deep dive on St. George, maybe a final thought for you, the listener. How can these stories, the stories of profound faith, of courage against the odds, of miraculous help, how might they offer you some strength or maybe a different perspective on your own challenges?
It's worth considering. And perhaps it might even spark an interest in looking deeper into this tradition of hagiography, the lives of the saints. There's a real richness there.
It definitely prompts you to think about the power of conviction, doesn't it? And the impact one individual can have when they stand firm for what they believe in.
Absolutely. The cost might be high, but the legacy can be immense.
Well, thank you for joining us on this exploration of the incredible story of St. George.
We hope it gave you a clearer picture of his courage, his faith, and why these traditions of miracles continue to endure.
Definitely consider the themes we touched on. Maybe delve into some other saints' lives, or the broader history of early Christianity. There's always more to discover.